character design is more important than you may think. Having a diverse pool of characters is not only beneficial to your story, but it's also beneficial to your viewers. Now, let me explain. Easily this can be a non-issue. And maybe if humanity were less likely to look for validation, it wouldn't be. But because we do, it is. Plus, media, no matter what form it takes, is a major source of validation for a lot of people. People often say that you want to get the best actor or actress for the role above all else. A person who can portray the character in a meaningful way, a way that will demand empathy from your audience. And we can all agree with that. But I find a few problems can arise from this. For example, we have movies like Gods of Egypt. None of the characters in that movie reflect what those people would actually look like. And this is an issue because if you are rarely represented in media, movies like this should really be a big win. Also, when a hero or protagonist is depicted one way, the viewer, in an attempt to empathize, will start to see not what makes them similar, but what makes them different, the reasons they are not a hero. And finally, just general overuse of one thing is a bad thing, but I guess that's much more debatable. The part that makes this even harder on the viewer and their self-esteem is that as an artist or a creator, we typically want our characters and our worlds to look appealing. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. That should be a goal that you strive for. But the results tend to be a really attractive white male, which is a very small percentage in America. Let's put that in perspective. A little over 60% of Americans are white, and about half of that is male. That leaves about 70% of the country unaccounted for. Unaccounted for is a gross exaggeration. The world has changed, and we don't give ourselves enough credit for how far we've come. But I personally feel that people who advocate for change often force them upon everyone, even those who are not affected by the current industry. So to improve this, we need to help people understand why these changes are necessary, so that maybe they'll want them too. If you've never been on the side of the argument that is not being affected, or maybe even benefited from the situation, it can be really hard to understand how some people, don't want the change or don't see the need for the change, or why they're not angry or desperate for the change like you are. I've been on both sides. As a young man, I've benefited from the patriarchal society, and as a minority, I've been judged and scoffed at. So I have a little insight on what it's like to be both rejected and privileged. So let me explain what I mean. When I was in middle school, my history teacher was an older man of European descent, and definitely a product of his time. The class was as you would expect it to be. Extremely boring. Like, is this class or is this nap time? Because I can't tell. But that's not what's important. You see, all the girls in the class would constantly say that he was sexist. And during that time, the only knowledge I had of sexism was the Powerpuff Girls episode called, Equal Fights, with Femme Fatale, a female thief who hypocritically used her feminism to justify her wrongdoings and to stay out of jail. So I didn't understand what they were talking about, and the other boys in class didn't really either. One day, the presidential elections came to be the topic, and Hillary had made note that she might be joining the running, which probably was the catalyst for the topic. But I remember him saying that the reason women couldn't be president, or in any position of power for that matter, is because if she had her period, she would just press the launch on nuke buttons out of her menstrual spite. There are so many things wrong with that statement. Not to mention that the president will be somewhere in their 40s, which things like periods will be ending soon for a lot of women. And how, no woman would actually do that. There are many more reasons why that was sexist of him, but as a 14-year-old boy looking to a teacher in a place where I should be getting accurate information, me and the other boys were like, oh, really? Probably shouldn't give women that kind of power then. And we didn't have any malicious intent, but it reinforced the oppression of women that is in place now. And as uninformed kids, we accepted the nonsense as facts, because it came from a trusted source. Not till I was much older did I really understand what the girls meant. And I couldn't see it before, and they did, because they were the ones living on the side being ostracized. Now that might seem like a tangent, but it's important. The purpose of the story is to illustrate how the people who aren't being ostracized don't see those things because, well, it's not happening to them. Okay, so let's get back on topic. Growing up, I didn't really have any heroes. I mean, I did, but none of them really represented me. I remember being in maybe second grade, and the movie Dungeons and Dragons had just came out. Marlon Wayne was one of the characters, and the young me was so excited. I mean, I've always been a fantasy buff, and to see a guy with my skin tone in a fantasy movie as a main character, well, that was just the greatest thing. I mean, I love the movie, but one thing I was very disappointed by, and of course that was that Marlon's character was just comedy relief. And even as a child, this was not what I wanted from his character. I remember going to school and having the teachers ask, "What'd you do on break?" And I said, "Oh, I went to go see D&D." And they asked me, "Well, did you like it? And who was your favorite character?" And I remember saying it was Marlon's character, only because I thought that I should. Like it was expected of me, when in reality, I was actually quite disappointed by his character. Not that I didn't like him, just that he didn't connect with me. Now, lucky for me, I at least get one brown-skinned character in the media that I like, and for that I am grateful. But all throughout TV, movies, people of color, especially men, were always just comedy relief, or worse, criminals, or gangbangers. Not to say that I hate those kind of characters, I just don't relate to them. So I grew up to despise those characters. I remember thinking every time they show up, what am I, a joke? What am I, a criminal? Because I only was represented as someone not to be taken seriously or someone not to be trusted. Meanwhile, my mother's telling me that I need to work twice as hard to get the same amount as others and to be virtuous and kind. This created a conflict within me and what I'm being represented as. So I started to reject myself and embrace others. I disliked Static Shock, which is funny because he and his show was everything I was looking for. But it was a little too late by the time his show aired, and when I started to get into it, it was canceled. The problem was, after all of the media's depiction of the people that looked like me, shown as urban and hip-hop, which often equated to being gang members and criminals, I started to hate the idea of those things showing up at all. This was only made worse by the adults in my community who often asked me, "Oh, you don't like your culture? Oh, you don't appreciate our struggle?" Whenever I was showing that I wasn't much into hip-hop or urban culture, as I was expected to be growing up. Now, I was growing up in the infamous emo age, all about being different and emotional, and I lived in the suburbs. It wasn't at all like the stereotypes the media depicted or the people around me conformed to. Over time, all my heroes being something that I'm not, I started to want to be them. And I never really hated myself for being the color that I am, but I did hate being on the side that was always shown as a criminal or goofy, never cool, serious, or heroic. This is directly related with the issues I had with the way I looked growing up, and why I always wear a hood to hide my hair, even still to this day. Now, I'm a pretty confident guy, and I like how I look. But when I don't have my hair done to the standards set by myself to match the societal standards that didn't take me into account when it was deciding what beauty is, well, I guess I feel self-conscious. Everything changed when Bleach by Tite Kubo and the character Tosin was created. And oh boy, did I love Tosin. I mean, I loved all the characters in Bleach, but he was special. He was cool. Not just some guy to be made fun of, not some guy who made jokes, but someone who was deep, in 3D. Justice was his motive. Justice was his downfall. His character, much like Bleach, was poetry. And he wasn't whitewashed or anything like that. He had a shaggy afro like me when he was a child, then braids like I had, and finally dreads, which I never had but always wanted when I was younger. And for me, it really only took one character, and I felt my self-image improve tenfold. But the thing is that there are still a lot of people who don't have someone to make them feel like they are cool, that they're hero worthy. George R.R. Martin, one of the most prolific writers of our time, he was on a panel one time, and a guy who was clearly a fan of his work and just wanted to have a character he could identify with in the books he loved to read, he asked him, why are there no brown protagonists in any of his books, and in the fantasy genre itself for that matter? And George Martin seemed a little flustered by the question, and he said that he makes books that reflects himself, and that if diversity is coveted, then the people who are not accounted for should start writing books in that genre to fill that gap. At first I felt that that was a cop-out answer, but I realized that he's right. Most creators make things that reflects themselves, and we do need more people to create to get that diversity to be a character norm. But most people are not creators, and they shouldn't have to change their whole lifestyle to fill these character roles. Because it's the responsibility of creators to look out for everyone. Because most likely, someone created a character that reached us too. And I'm also taking a part of this. This character here is a protagonist on a comic I'm currently working on. Her name is L'Oreal. I call her Laurel for short, and yes, that is a Stormlight Archives reference. And she hopefully will be a character that will be deep and awesome despite what she's not. I would like to show how people who are struggling with the things that they're not can push through those and be powerful. So in short, you should take opportunities to get wins with your work. You can be progressive and evolve what a standard can be. Make characters that can represent the people who are ignored and make a real difference in people's lives. Because more than likely some creator has done that for you. So pay it forward. Be a hero to those whose struggles you don't see or even understand, because it is hard on those people who do bear those burdens. And last but not least, it's important not to be afraid to be different and use ideas that are less tested, because the norm is only the norm because no one ever challenged it. Thank you for watching this video. In the comment section below, please tell me about a character that has impacted you, or if you had a similar experience for me. Thanks for watching.